So the way they handled the lore is better than I thought, but still kind of a mixed bag. A lot of the revelations in this game were hinted at in previous ones, and they delivered on the main points as far as I'm concerned. People are conflating the woke blight, infecting the game with supposedly lackluster lore, but honestly most of it makes sense and seems to have been set up this way. The archdemons, the magisters, the gods, the maker, and what it all means. It all has this ancient aliens type of feel whereby you deconstruct the Bible and Mayans and Egyptian runes and pyramids and all that with science and make this big distinction between the literary account and the historical account. A distinction that people like hardcore Christians will crucify themselves before making. And it's exactly the kind of vibe that I got from the series from the get-go. The Maker and his golden city were never going to be a real verbatim thing. There was always this gigantic mystery around what that actually is, if anything, and I quite like that approach and think they answered those questions rather well. That said, the way they reveal this stuff, the scenes themselves are so lifeless. It's just exposition dumping from talking heads every time. No pathos, no excitement, no cinematography, none of the info is revealed in an exciting way. It all makes it seem so token. None of this redeems the shit show that this game absolutely shouldn't have been. They stuck their dick in the series and pissed all over it when they put trans bullshit in it. I'm just being impartial here. It's unrealistic for a product to be wholly bad or wholly good. It's always some kind of a mixed bag, and I'm here to acknowledge both. At the very least, the greater lore is delivered upon. I just wish I found this stuff out in a different way rather than reading about it in posts, comment sections, and watching scenes on YouTube and being like, oh okay, that's what it all meant. Cute. Moving on.
Well, that's because you didn't play the game. You should play the game. It's so good.
I'd rather get anal probed by the Dildonians. The Illuminati teasing at the end is the most autistic shit I've seen in years. Trillions of years of evolution all the way from single-celled organism, and humanity hasn't even learned not to pull a fucking Kaguya Otsutsuki. This was the real big bad all along. A cheap retcon that you can pull an infinity of times, still not even the Dildonians want to touch that rancid brain of yours. The greater community's sentiment that this should have been a true sequel to Inquisition makes sense. There are so many instances where Scout Harding, yes, that's her full name, has to say back when the Inquisitor did this, or when I discovered this with the Inquisitor, when Solas and the Inquisitor exchanged pelvic fluids. It just reads like this should have been a continuation of the Inquisitor's story. I mean, how odd is it for the Inquisitor to be given the option to romance Solas in the previous game, an entire ambitious subplot creating a lasting connection with arguably the game's low-key antagonist, and then relegate the Inquisitor to a cameo in the sequel where Solas takes center stage and tries to enact his plans, or should I say, should have taken the stage, since in pure MCU fashion, that which was set up gets sidelined in the intro in favor of two Scooby-Doo villains that have no allure or personality as far as I can tell. How much cooler would it have been if the Scooby-Doo villains came back severely weakened, their powers completely drained by the veil, and they would have to play the long, smart game, hiding in plain sight, becoming charismatic advisors to kings, biding their time till they restore their power, similarly to what Solas did in Inquisition, which is what made him into an actual character and one of the best, most morally complex villains in gaming. Yeah, I said it. No? Okay. Dragon Age has always been more episodic and experimental with its storytelling than something like Mass Effect, in that each sequel was its own self-contained thing that only fed into the overarching plot and mythology as a side effect rather than making that its main objective. Dragon Age Origins was a fairly standard save-the-world affair, a mix of The Lord of the Rings and A Song of Ice and Fire. Dragon Age 2 was about a handsome Jewish man's attempts to immigrate to the US and then single-handedly fuck it up. And the third kinda goes back to the save-the-world stuff, placing heavier emphasis on building alliances and influence within the world, while also drip-feeding various developments to the main plot thread started by both its predecessors. It came with the usual downsides that this loosely connected approach usually does, like a less focused overarching narrative that seems to meander endlessly instead of getting to the point already, but the games make good enough use of it. And then we have the fourth and latest installment, Dragon Age Veilguard, which by the way I don't get why "the" is in there, it makes the title 10 times lamer. Imagine a world where the games are titled Dragon Age The Origins, Dragon Age The Inquisition, and Dragon Age The 2. It would be a decidedly dumber one, hard though that may be to believe given the state of our current one, but I digress. Out of all the Dragon Age titles, Veilguard was by far the one best fitted to be a true sequel to its predecessor rather than unrelated Black Mirror episode number 425. In Origins, the Darkspawn were defeated. In Dragon Age 2, Hawk's origin story more or less concluded, yet in Inquisition, the secret final boss was never dealt with, barely being revealed in a post-credits scene, and the Trespasser DLC only cemented that a great conflict was about to shit the fan, and there were a dozen unresolved plotlines and character conflicts like Varric and Solas, the Inquisitor and Solas, particularly if you romance the Elven Cue Ball, the purpose of the Inquisition now that it's one of the most powerful organizations in Thedas, and the dangers of it being corrupted, referencing the real-life Inquisition and what was foreshadowing all along, Hardy Har Har, or should I say Harding Har Har. Yet Snailguard doesn't fully commit. to any of this. Varric becomes the newest in an old line of mentors that dies in the intro, like Duncan, Nihilus, and Alec Ryder before him. One of the relationships that was truly well cultivated in the last game, only for it to come to situations like tell Solas I told him he's a cowardly bald cunt, and Solas telling you to tell Varric that the reception in the Fate is shoddy and he can't quite make out what he's saying through all the bad writing. The Inquisitor just pops in and exposits as mentioned, and the Morgan Flemeth Mythal plotline threatens to lose all relevancy at this point. All of it reads like a series that let itself go for far too long and that needed an oxygen-deprivating corset to tighten it up. And then we have the revelations about the old gods and the magisters and the archdemons and the blight, the latter of which turned out to be not evil at all, just a misunderstood homicidal sick puppy. All of these revelations delivered so monotone with the gusto of Moist Critical doing Hamlet.
AI.
And I blame the whole series for this. 'Tis not just Snailguard, but also Dragon Ages 2 and 3 that left the greater mythology of the series to rot. Can we find out more about the Darkspawn? Yo, check out our new sick hero, doesn't he look cool? That's nice, but what about the Blight and the End of the World and Andraste and the Maker and that whole bit about the Tevinter Mages? Oh, would you look at these cool dragons? Okay, time to hunt them, off you go. And read this 42-page codex on this new Inquisition faction we did while you're at it. By the time I finished Inquisition, the original plotline about Darkspawn and the moral conundrums imposed by concepts like the Maker and the Chantry seemed but a distant memory, so the narrative meandering was an issue way before Failguard, but I still put a significant chunk of the blame on it because it had the opportunity to tie all this stuff up with a much more impressive and satisfying ribbon rather than just pulling a Devil May Cry 5.
He's your father!
What?
There comes a time in any franchise's life where, no matter how episodic and loosely connected the individual titles are, the final one has to stop playing with its dick in the sand and use the litany of characters, concepts, and plot points that the previous games set up and acknowledge everything that came before. There's a reason why Mass Effect 3 only introduced a couple new characters and mostly played around with the established ones, because you have to stop buying IKEA furniture and start installing IKEA furniture if you want to have a fully functional living room at some point. Or sex dungeon. This is of course partly because of branching decisions in RPGs that quickly grow out of hand and force you to minimize the roles of various characters who could or could not be alive at this point, so that you don't have to write a comprehensive 3-part story arc for a dead man. Be that as it may, I think taking a page out of Mass 3's book and having less new companions would have been a prudent call, since the world is already filled to the brim with interesting characters that all showed up for one game and then inexplicably fucked off. Where's Alistair, Zevran, Hawk, Cullen, Iron Bull, Kieran, the motherfucking hero of Ferelden? This was the time to bring everyone together in an epic showdown against history made manifest, their very own Bible come to eat them alive. Instead, we get another new hero that has to gather another new team and do the same fucking thing all over again and blah. And more to the point, all these revelations about the history of the world, amazing as they are, do not hit home in the slightest because no one is there to witness them. Apart from a few shitwrists, no one who would be flabbergasted by these findings ever hears of them. Where's the Chantry, the Templars, all the smug, preachy priests and nuns and holy men? Where's Cassandra, Leliana? They do not use this information to make any kind of impact on the world of Dragon Age. It's all just trivia, FYI, FAK, IIRC, bullshit RC. And then, are we talking about the cum buckets? Let's talk about the cum buckets. The amount of propaganda and just general bad writing shoved into this game is phenomenal. I can't even tell you. In fact, I don't need to tell you. I can just show you.
So, I'm non-binary.
She's still holding the ruby in her other hand. Shit. They're still holding it. Sorry.
I'm supposed to struggle with who I am? Even if I don't feel like I fit, even if I feel wrong?
No, you misunderstood.
Then say it better!
Or I don't know, like something else inside you.
No, it has to be me.
Has to? What if it's not?
How?
Sometimes the stone magic feels like something else in me. It's me, but it's not me, you know?
You're really nice. And, you smell good.
Oh, thank you?
Really good.
Do you want to come with me to break this in?
Yeah. Like, now?
Of course now.
Oh, good. Let's go.
Okay, the stomach I get, but did it really have?
Hey, who ate the last breaded cheese wand?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I guess I thought, well, I don't know what.
It's fine.
No, they're your favorite.
This shit is so hilarious. It's so bizarre hearing voice actors that are actually good reciting material that's actually dog shit. When you buy a game about dragons, monsters, political backstabbing where you're covered in more blood than sweat, named Dragon Age, that's kind of what you expect to get, not a sermon on how to not offend the mentally deranged. Fear not, we're all mentally deranged, the difference is the rest of us keep it to ourselves. Mostly. If I had to choose between playing through this garbage or covering myself in honey, going to the Bear District and loudly proclaiming that I'm there to fuck their women, I'd stick a bullseye on my ass for good measure. None of this shit is relevant to the plot, the characters, the world, the solar system. It's not like some woman was not allowed to be a knight or mage because of the medieval world she's in. That would at least be halfway appropriate, whereas this is like tearing a picture of the most recent poll results and stamping it on screen during an intense battle. It's real-world bullshit plastered on people's escapist retreat. You can do better. In fact, Dragon Age itself has done better in the past. Compare the desperate cum gargling on display in Bail While You Can Guard with Dorian's loyalty quest from one game prior. Dorian is gay. Unfortunately for the legion of female players that got aroused by the boundless charm he displayed in Inquisition, and is the son of some high-ranking who cares, who is also part of the mage aristocracy, and so he can't be seen having a son who strays from the norm and doesn't further the family line, and so he tried to use magic to turn his son straight, which is fucking hilarious. On second thought, this entire series is insane. Point being that despite the inherent gayness of the quest, it nonetheless delved into topics like heritage, family responsibilities, free will, and peer pressure, whereas doing push-ups because you offended someone is a thematically dead, pointless, worthless non-story that makes me want to caress my neck with a noose. And apologists will no doubt say that this is just a small part of the game and that most of it is good and worth my time, which brings me to my next point, because the identity politics machine has struck gold with Hail Mary Guard, because BioWare fans tend to be very agreeable, positive people that will find a nickel of hope in a mountain of shit, and they took full advantage of that. Hopeful, bookish, well-mannered nerds with a penchant for stories, heroic stories in particular, who have learned to say, yeah, but the animation on Morrigan's left butt cheek, at least that's good, as the smear of cosmic shit encroaches on their last vestiges of sanity. They are the embodiment of the "this is fine" meme. Or my favorite one is the "I've waited 10 years for this, don't ruin my enjoyment," which I'm curious if that's how you'd pick your spouse too, like I've waited 10 years to get laid, who cares if she's a prostitute with schizoid episodes, probably a she-male too. Or she emotionally manipulates me and calls me a cuck, a doodle douche every 2 minutes, but at least she has a nice smile. I could go on, but my brain is starting to peace out. That or is the news cutting circulation. In summary, Death to the White People Guard actually manages to provide good answers to the bigger questions of the series, but they're answered with a whimper, not a bang, and the legacy of this legendary franchise deserves to be carried forward by a much better game than the one we got. Well, you got. I ain't touching that shit with a 10-foot dildo.